to present my paper about the topic that we have been through when we are in Sudan, and the last lecture which is being presented.
Now,
now I'm ready to start my paper.
Yeah, cool. With all the update of your life there now, it's like it's the performance of the reality you are living in it now in Sudan. So it is. I think you have a lot to say in everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I do. Is it? Will I start? Hello.
Yes, you can start. I think everybody's there hearing you, and yes, please start. And you can see here the question.
Okay.
If someone have a question or say something, you can see. Yeah, you saw all the same. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm welcoming everyone here, and this lecture is intended to highlight the four subjectivities mentioned in the book of the Marxian theorist Michael Harder and Antonio Negri in their book Declaration. I think it's important to put a highlight on the subjectivity of mediatized subjectivity or personality, among other subjectivities which they mentioned in their books. The mediatized subjectivity, as I mentioned, is meant as the cry of new liberalism among the subjectivity of indebted, among the subjectivity of represented, among the subjectivity of securitized. But as I mentioned before, we are going to concentrate on the subject of mediatized subjectivity or person because it relates to the festival topics. So I'm going to start with the mediatized. In previous eras, it often appeared that in relationship to the media political action was stifled primarily by the fact that people didn't have sufficient access to information or the means to communicate and express their own views. Indeed, today, repressive governments attempt to limit access to websites, close down blogs and Facebook pages, attack journalists, and generally block access to information. Countering such repression is certainly an important battle, and we have repeatedly witnessed how media networks access to them eventually and inevitably overflow all such barriers. We are more concerned, though, about the ways that today's mediatized subjects suffer from the opposite problem. The opposite problem of stimulated by a surplus of information, communication, and expression. The problem is no longer getting people to express themselves, Gilles Deleuze explains, but provide little gaps of solitude and silence in which they might eventually find something to say. Repressive forces don't stop people from expressing themselves, but rather force them to express themselves. What a relief to have nothing to say. The right to say nothing, because only then is there a chance for framing the rare and ever rarer the things that might be worth saying. The problem of surplus, however, is not only homologous to the problem of lack. It's not even a matter of quantity. Deleuze seems to be recalling here the political paradox highlighted by Etienne de la Boite and Baruch Spinoza. Sometimes people strive for their servitude as if it were their salvation. It's possible that in their voluntary communication and expression, in their blogging and web browsing and social media practices, people are contributing to, instead of contesting repressive forces, instead of information and communication. Deleuze says what we often need is silence necessary for there to be thought. This is not really social. The aim is not really silence for Deleuze, but having something worth saying. Primarily at stake in the question of political action and liberation, in other words, is not the quantity of information, communication, expression, but rather their quality. The importance of information and communication in repressive apparatuses or projects of liberation is highlighted by the fact that that laboring practices and economic production are becoming ever more mediatized. Media communications technologies are increasingly central to all types of productive practices and are key to the kinds of cooperation necessary for today's biopolitical production. For many workers, moreover, especially in the dominant countries, communications and social media seem simultaneously to free them from and chain them to their jobs. With your smartphone and your wireless connections, you can go anywhere and still be on the go, which you realize quickly means that where you go, you are still working. Mediatization is a major factor in the increasingly blurred divisions between work and life. It thus seems more appropriate to think of such workers as not so much alienated as mediatized, whereas the consciousness of the alienated worker is separated or divided. The consciousness of the mediatized is subsumed or absorbed in the web. The consciousness of the mediatized is not really split, but fragmented. معلش يا سامر خليني ارجع عليك، انا في لكشر كده برجع لك المحاضره. قلت لك انا بس في المحاضره، برجع لك بعد شويه، انا في المحاضره. اوكي. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. We are there.
Okay. As we said, the consciousness of the mediatized is not really split, but fragmented and dispersed. The media, furthermore, don't really make you passive. In fact, they constantly call on you to participate, to choose what you like, to contribute your opinions, to narrate your life. The media are constantly responsive to your likes and dislikes, and in return, you are constantly attentive. The media is thus a subjectivity that is paradoxically neither active nor passive, but rather constantly absorbed in attention. How can you separate the repressive powers of media from the potential for liberation. It is possible to recognize qualitative distinctions among different types of information and communication. Perhaps a look back at the role of information and communication in a factory in an earlier phase of production can give us some hints. In the early 60s, Roman Alcoi studied the kinds of information produced by workers in Iberia, Italy. Others use writing information. Matthew Bastianini translate alcoholic recognition into a distinction between living and dead information. There is living, a distinct living and dead information, parallel to Marx's notion of living and dead labor. Living information is continually produced by workers in order to be transformed into a dead information and crystallized in the machines and the entire bureaucratic apparatus. There are thus at least two circuits of communication in the factory, whereas the dead language of management and the machines codifies and reinforces the functioning of discipline and relationships of subordination. The exchange of living information among workers can be mobilized in a collective action and in subordination. Just as human productivity is masked in the figure of the indebted, in the figure of the mediatized, precise, mystified, and depotentialized human intelligence. Depotentialized human intelligence, as if you talk about a human that detached from his power, a human without power. Or better, the mediatized is full of dead information, suffocating our powers to create living information. Marx makes a similar distinction among types of information and communication in an even earlier phase when he claims that the French peasantry in the mid-19th century is not able to act as a class. The peasant is not a class. He argues that since the peasants are dispersed across the countryside and cannot effectively communicate with one another, they are not capable of collective political action, and as he famously says, cannot represent themselves. The standard against which Marx measures rural peasants' life here is that of the urban proletariat, which he communicates and thus can act politically and represent itself as a class. It would be a mistake, however, to think of the information and communication that the peasant lack in Marx view simply in terms of quantity. He is not saying that the peasant would not support Louis Bonaparte and his vow imperial dreams if they read all the new papers and knew of his political intrigues. His wasteful wars and his gambling debts. The most important communication that proletariat have and the peasant class is enacted in the physical corporeal being together in the factory. The corporeal existence of bodies, not the actual, not the virtual. They are talking the actual existence of bodies, of human bodies, not the virtual one. So the class and the basis of political action are formed not primarily through the circulation of information or even ideas, but rather through the construction of political effects, which require a physical proximity. There is a condition, physical proximity. The encampments and incubations of 2011 have rediscovered these tools of communication. Facebook, Twitter, and internet and other kinds of communication mechanisms are useful, but nothing can replace the being together of bodies and corporeal communication that is the basis of collective political intelligence and action. In all the communication throughout the world, the communication of on the street, people in Argentina, people in Sudan here, which we call Sabah, which we call sitting like Erfam. All this occupation even in cases when they lasted only a short time, the participants experience the power of creating new political effects through being together. Perhaps it's significant in this regard that the call to occupy Wall Street that appeared in the summer of 2011 was cast in artistic terms and was indeed heeded by, among others, artists collective in New York. An incubation is a kind of happening, a performance piece that generates political effects. The middle classes and the traditional left also recognize how much we are integrated in media system and how much we are impoverished by them. But the only response they can make in a combination of nostalgia and old-fashioned left normalism. They know that as media move ever deeper into our life from print and broadcast electronic media, they create experiences that are increasingly superficial. The slow act of composing a personal letter to mail in post has been almost entirely induced by rapidity of email messaging. Complex narratives of your life situation, longings, and desires have been reduced to the typical questions of social media. Where are you right now? What are you doing? The habits of practices of friendship have been diluted in an online procedure of training. Perhaps the extraordinarily widespread support for the incubation can explain in part by the fact that the middle classes and the traditional left recognize that the movements are attacking problems from which they also suffer but are incapable of addressing. So how can we solve the problem of being mediatized? Mediatized subjectivity, as Harold and Negri said, all people in the world is not is categorized as mediatized or digitized or represented or you should be in one class. How can you they suggest solutions? They say be the truth. In the politics of truth, you be the truth. How can you be the truth? How can you create the truth? How can you be refused to not be represented? Because the flow of information, the information banks that control our life, we don't have a filter against them. We don't have the right from wrong. We cannot filtrate all the time information, and we cannot protect ourselves from them. We need to refuse it, but not how can we refuse it? They suggest when we refuse it to be mediatized, we have not only to stop allowing ourselves to be fooled, believing everything we read in the papers and simply disgusting the truth we are fed, but also we need to break our attention away from the media. It sometimes seems that we are afraid to video screens and can't take our eyes off them. How often have you seen people walking and even driving on city streets with their heads down while texting, who then bump into each other as if hypnotized? Break the spell. Break the spell and discover a new way to communicate. It's not only or even primarily that we need different information or different technologies. Yes, we need to discover the truth, but also, and more important, we need to meet new truths, which can be created only by similarities in networks, communicating and being together. We need similarities, not singular. You don't have to be singular. You need to be a singularity. There is difference between being singularity and becoming singular. There is difference between these two things. We need similarities in networks, communicating and being together. Political projects that focus on providing information, although certainly important, can easily lead to disappointment and disillusionment. If only the people knew that their government is doing the crime it has committed, one might think they would rise up and change it. But in fact, even if they were to read all the books by Noam Chomsky and all the material released by WikiLeaks, they could still vote the same politicians back in power and ultimately reproduce the same society. Information alone is not enough. The same is true of practices of ideology critique. More generally, revealing the truth about power does not stop people from striving for their servitude as if it were their liberation. And neither it's enough to open a space for communicative action in the public sphere. The mediatized is not a figure of false consciousness, but rather one caught in the web, attentive, enthralled. Before you can actively communicate in networks, you must become a singularity. The old cultural projects against alienation wanted you to pretend to yourself. They battle the ways in which capitalist society and ideology have separated us from ourselves, broken us in two, and thus sought a form of wholeness, and most often in individual terms. When you become a singularity instead, you will never be a whole self. Similarities are defined by being multiple internally and finding some self externally early in relation to others. The communication and expression of similarities in networks then is not individual but choral. Not individual but choral. And it's always operative, linked to a meaning, making ourselves while being together. When we become unmediatized, we don't cease to interact with media. Indeed, the movement of 2011 are known for their employment of social media such as Facebook and Twitter. But our relationship to media changes. First, as similarities, when we gain a free mobility in networks, we swarm like insects, follow new pathways, and come together in new patterns and constellations. As we know, it happens in the movements, our last movements here in Sudan. The maps of the cities in Sudan are changed by these constellations, because as Foucault said or Deleuze said, there is new cartographers in the city to change the map of the city. If you change it, then you change the mobility. This is, I think, what they mean by yeah. Yeah, in a new constellation, the form of political organization is central here. A decentralized multitude of similarities communicates horizontally, and social media are useful to them because they correspond to their organizational form. Demonstrations and political actions are born today not from a central committee that gives the word or order, but rather from coming together and the discussion on numerous small groups after the demonstration. Similarly, messages spread virally throughout the neighborhoods and a variety of metropolitan circuits. Second, media become tools for our collective self-production. We are able to create new tools only when we cease to be individual and constitute ourselves in our relationship to others, opening our a common language. Making the truth is a collective linguistic act of creativity. Sometimes the creation and diffusion of political slogans in determinations constitute an act of truth making. The discourse of 99% versus the one present the emerged form that occupy movements, for example, illuminated the reality of social inequality and dramatically shifted the terms of public debate. A more complex example is the truth created by the 2001 Argentina slogan, throw them all out. The slogan is expressed in condensed form, not only the corruption of politicians, political parties, and the constitutional system itself, but also the potential for a new participator, a new democracy. Such production of truth also involves the creation of political effects by negotiating the terms of our being together in relation to each other, expressing these political effects in being together embodies a new truth. Real communication among similarities in networks thus requires an encampment. This is the kind of self-learning experience and knowledge production that takes place, for example, in student occupations. The movement feels magical and enlightening because in being together, a collective intelligence and a new kind of communication are construed or constructed. In the occupied squares of 2011, from Tahrir Square to Bord Kuwait Dorsal to the Kuti Park, new truths were produced through discussion, conflict, and consensus in assemblies, working groups, and communications on topics from housing rights and mortgage to gender relationship and violence function as both self-learning experience and means to spread knowledge production. Anyone who has lived through such encampment recognizes how new knowledge and new political effects are created corporeal and intellectual intensity of the interactions. And this is the end of my paper, and thank you very much. And now it's time if there is any question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bakri, for that awesome lecture. I didn't have more question, but more was like, really, if we can break this, to how you see this impact of that, the socialism, like the crisis of the new liberalism and inside the mediatizing world, and exactly what is mean that, let's say, an example of Sudan is like, what is mean that within this new state, like, do I know, masalan, before, it's like there are a lot of like digital thing we cannot get access to it was, yeah, it's like, that because the relation with the sanction it is was not the right, it is the copyright, it is all this kind of stuff. Is like basic مثلا Windows or having Mac in Sudan, or having like when we talk to the device. Okay, when we move after that from it, what does mean the policy of the state, how the policy of the state was, like do remember, like when we have those the state decide like for 2 months or 3 months we didn't have an internet, so we don't have a social interaction in the same way, and where in Sudan the situation, like when we think about this, like in a law wise also, like in a right wise, with this debate, I see also debate of like boycotting was like Zain, it's like as a company, it's like or like in Sudan, from where it start and why the user of that kind of mediatized thing is like telephone or internet or this, why they're starting this kind of campaign, what they're asking, is it coming from a right or it's coming from which the action, because I see the action moving of like, let's boycott it for one day, nobody call and the stuff. For all of this thing, if you can break it down, I will be very happy. It's not more of question, but more of a discussion.
Yeah. There is, if you approach the experience of Sudanese government against the people of Sudan, people of Sudan were lived in 30 years of dictatorship. It's a dictatorship government that cut all the access to all kinds of information, not only the media, the electronic one, but also there is a censorship in every kind of like newspaper. As you know, here in Sudan, people get the information after being censored, and that means this is not the truth. People here in Sudan, from the moment that the government being in the power in 1989, got no access to every kind of information. So, and they spread this suppressive kind or took away to access to information in several ways. Like we don't have internet in every time, and we live from that moment in an emergency state. The declaration of the emergency state in Sudan is the main reason of
is it
cutting. Yeah. Yeah, this is the main reason. Yeah. And when you declare the state of exception or the state
of emergency,
emergency, then you control the information, and controlling the information is the only way that dictatorship suppress the people. The important way for them to control the people. So Sudan doing this kind of suppression in two ways, like the new liberalism, neoliberalism governments, neoliberalism approaches, using the information, the surplus of information, Sudan using the surplus of information and deprive people from information at the same time. And this is what's happening in Sudan. Like when you say a lot of people killed in Darfur, you don't access to the actual number of people. If you say there is a pandemic or epidemic, if you want to make a record of dead people in Gadaref, say, in Eastern Sudan, you can't get the information of the true information of a pandemic because the politics here is designed. The politics and politician is designed to not say the truth. As Hannah Arendt, the philosopher, said, when it comes to politica, it has nothing to do with truth. This is what's happening in Sudan.
So, in a right way or a resistant way, for you, what does mean this campaign, like this campaign going on for these 2 days of boycotting one of this jargon company is this Zain, okay, and this is an act of my question, is this an act of economical, is an act of bad service, or the act of what they control them, they sell them information? From which part this, if you really the terms of law also between the right of the protection, the right, when you are already buying the internet, after that the company decide with the government, they cut the internet for 2 months, but my internet will finish in eBay. So there's a lot of money, stolen money. Yeah, it's was in a situation or another.
If there is a firm judicial system, then would have been declared insolvent company, because every person here in Sudan can ticket then for cutting the internet for 2 months when we are sitting in April 2019. Two months of without internet. It's when you think about it, it's an intervention between politics or political and economical thinking or thought here in Sudan. And it's crystallized because all the time there is intervention. You can't make a clear line between the intervention of political and economy here in Sudan. It goes together. And if you say it's for political reason, then you are wrong. If you say for political reason, then you are wrong. You need to be in the middle between them, as if all the time. You don't talk about them. You talk about another. It's all about also corruption in political, corruption in economy, and there is a lot to say about this here in Sudan.
Yeah. You're totally in this situation. I don't know, but if anyone have a question there, so have me your question. But
yeah, I would also have a question, actually, and several. In your paper, you said that the political organization is central here because it changes the map of the city. Do you have maybe another example how we can imagine this?
Okay. I mean the corporeal existence of bodies is important for the political organization. Not only we exist on the social media as if you now exist in Facebook and share your ideas or activation against the government. I mean the physical existence, not only the is important for the to organize political action. This is what I mean.
Thank you very much. I also have an other question. You said in your paper that the media became the tools of collective self-production. And my question would here, what new tools would be necessary, or what could be tools that we still need to produce things like equality that you mentioned?
Okay. As the example that Deleuze said, the French philosopher said, we are overwhelmed in a flow of information, and we need to deal with it, the surplus of information. So when you are in a social media, like a lot of information in your Facebook account can be get your gender and your habits and your what you want, you like, you dislike. This information about you make easier for the government to control your life, or for the system to control your life. You know a lot about you. Not to be silent is a right. To stay silent is a right. It's a good right more than to express yourself, because suppressive, as Deleuze said, suppressive governments make you to express yourself, not to stay silent. Stay silent is good. Then if you express yourself and put it on social media, you make, as people in the examples of you make a dead information. Dead information helps the government and helps the other to control you, as it happened in the case of neoliberalism and the approaches they do. They know the information and they make an idea or a price that represent and they represent you and make you feel of something that not happened to you. They picture something, they represent something, and say this is your price, and then the solution of this price is here. I'm the only one who know the solution. I'm the only one you depend on to the securitized subjectivity beside the represented subjectivity are all stemming from the surplus information and our wrong using of the media and the information, the flows of information that we we get from the media, if I get your question right.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I understand you right, I mean, there is one say that manipulation is nowadays often not done by telling made-up information, but by leaving certain informations out or hiding information and only show a distorted selection of information. Have I understood you right?
Yes.
The right to silence, I think, is an interesting thing here that you mentioned. Yeah, maybe a last question from me. You mentioned in your paper that the media tools also are a self-learning experience, and yeah, the question would then maybe be, what can universities bring to us on that, if we are already self-learning?
What? I didn't get your question.
You mentioned in your talk that the tools and the media that we use is a self-learning experience. Am I quoting you right?
Okay. I said this in the context that using social media is sometimes useful when we use it like to make movements against governments. Like here in Sudan, we use the Facebook to get the time when we get out of street, and we wait for this thing, and we say the schedule is there. The schedule is here, because the somebody is declared when we the time to get out of the street and to make demonstration against the. This is what I mean by self-learning. Self-learning, because you share your idea with another bodies, and you know something from this experience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot for all of this awesome answer and speaking. If I think we already passed the time, 5 minutes. So if you want to say to us last word before we close this session, but yeah, I'm very, very, very glad like we could hear your paper and discuss it and go together in a conversation.
Yeah. I'm very glad also being here to represent this paper on behalf of what that under incorporation here in Sudan, and it's my source of happiness is coming from opening the possibilities of people here to participate in and to think with people collectively in the rest of the world, because the same problems is here and there and everywhere. I think it's overwhelming experience to be here, and I'm so glad. And this is my first time to participate in such things, and I wish it was being it is being useful. And thank you again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for you. Yeah.
Thank you a lot.
Yeah. So ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.